Hello, welcome to the YA Book Club live show for the December book, and Happy New Year. We're going to be discussing You Better Watch Out, and there will be spoilers, so if you haven't read this book yet, it might be good to save this video and watch it at another time. I'm joined by three of my lovely friends who were just saying before we came online that I've got to know all of you really well, and I don't think you've all met on screen before, so it's nice to have you all together. I'm joined by Gemma, Kasia, and Shelley. Obviously, we'll be chatting to the people in the comments, and we will be talking about the book on screen as well. So can you start, everybody, by telling us a little bit about yourselves, and then we'll get cracking talking about the book. Do you want to start us off, Kasia?
Sure. So I'm Kasia. My channel has merged this year, so it's now you can find me under Horror Sickness, and I do all horror from books to movies. Yeah, so that's basically it.
I love that. That kind of makes it a bit easier to manage everything, doesn't it?
Yeah, I mean, having a full-time job and 2 YouTube channels and a private life is hard.
That's true.
So I think it's gonna be better like this, so that I feel more relaxed about planning content that I'm more like proud of, instead of just rushing because you have 2 channels and a job and this and that. And I think it's gonna allow me also to do things that I like more.
Yeah, makes complete sense to me. And your aesthetic is very much kind of a cohesive whole, isn't it? So
hopefully,
yeah, that's a very good idea. How about you, Jem? Do you want to tell us a little bit about you?
Yeah, I'm Gemma, so you can find me over on Gem in Wonderland on TikTok, and I'm generally a big YA reader, mainly focusing on YA and fantasy, but with Amy's help, I've been slowly expanding my genres into various bits of horror and thriller. So yeah, you'll find those on there as well.
Ooh, cool.
Likewise, I'm watching your TikTok and like slowly thinking, oh, I could try some fantasy. It's not as scary as I thought. And actually, one of my favourite books of last year. I don't know whether any of you have come across. Oh no, I'm going to butcher the title. I think it's called All the Hidden Monsters, or All These Hidden Monsters by Amy Jordan. It comes out in April or May this year, and it's a really, really good like crime romantasy, I think they're calling it. So it's a big mishmash of things that I like, plus the fantasy that I'm like dipping my toes in. So yeah, I reckon all of you'd probably like that. Kasia for the murder, you too. Sorry, Kasia. I feel like we know each other well enough at this point. You won't take offense at that. I take that.
No, of course not. I would take murder over romance anytime. It's fine.
I like both, actually. And I think, Shelley, you're with me on that, aren't you? We like a bit of, we were talking about this the other day, we like a bit of kissing and murder.
The two together is good, yeah. That's a winner.
Do you want to tell us a bit about yourself, Shelley, before we start talking about the book?
Sure, thanks for having me on. It's great to meet you guys as well, and I'll follow along with you both because that's everything you've said up my street too. So I'm Shelley, and I just published my first book the 7th of November last year. It's called Landis, and it's a YA fantasy. It's for the sort of younger end YA at this point, but my agent at the moment has a sort of YA crossover out on submission, which is horror thriller. So that's what I'm kind of more writing now. So I'm looking forward to hopefully finding a home for that soon. But you can find me at Shelley Mac Books across the board. And yeah, I'm in for all the horror. I love it. So this was a good choice, I think, for a Christmas horror. I mean, come on. Could you get anything better than that?
Yeah, agreed. Publishing is a funny thing, isn't it? That a book that you wrote like a couple of years ago ends up coming out and you've already sort of moved on to other stuff by then, and maybe fantasy, but you're obviously leaning into the horror a little bit. So let's see who's here in the comments, and then we will get to talking about the book. Hi, Stephen. Hi, Adrian. Hi, Nina. It's nice to see you up here. Nina's somebody I actually know in real life. So it's nice
cool.
To see you on here too. I know all of you in real life, but met face to face. Although technically I've met two of you face to face, so I don't know what I'm talking about. Just
me to meet face to face. It'll happen one day.
You're a bit harder to meet. You're a bit further away. Hi, Sally. Hi. Nice to see lots of familiar faces and some new people tonight. Hi, Sharon.
Hey.
Yeah, I mean, if I had to choose between the two, I think I might probably go for the murder. There is that, of course, and I'll keep that in mind for future plot twists. Hi, Caroline. Yeah, I know that feeling quite often. I tried to leave this one a little bit later because I've made that mistake before of reading it in a week and then going, whoops, what was that book about? Yeah, I feel like Nina and Sharon are kindred spirits there. I've also been dragging Nina to the dark side and getting her to read creepy books lately. So this is an interesting book. I feel like there was loads of things I enjoyed about it, and then some things that I think are a bit more challenging that we can discuss. So I want to start off by talking about whether you enjoyed the book, and if you give ratings, what you would rate it. Do you want to start us off, Shelley?
Sure. So I'll be honest, it took me a while to get into the book. I would say probably about maybe 100 to 150 pages it took me before I was really quite into it. And I think it was because it was third person present tense. It was like the tense for me was like very unusual. And I've read books like that where it's been multiple POV and one of them has been in this tense and the rest have been first person present. So it just took my head a wee bit of time to get around that. But then I kind of got into the flow and I was into it. And I found that the pace was a bit of a slow burn. So the pacing really, really came on more towards the end. And I did end up quite enjoying it. But I was struggling. Yeah, there's a lot in this book to discuss, which we're obviously going to do just now. So it kind of made me a little bit unsure as to how I was going to rate it at the end. So I was kind of going between maybe a kind of 3.5, 4. So I'm still in deciding mode with that one, but I'm interested to see what you guys think as well.
That was very well said, Shelley. Very very nicely put. I think it is difficult when you read a book that has lots of issues in it, because some things will obviously kind of resonate with you, and especially when you've got books with like characters of lots of different backgrounds and lots of representation, it's kind of hard to digest a lot of it, isn't it, and to figure out where you come out on it. What do you think, Jem? What was your final takeaway from this one?
Yeah, I agree with Shelley that it also took me a while to get into it. I feel like things didn't really start kicking off until we maybe got to like day 10 or 11, where the gifts started to get a little bit more gruesome. And I did like the range of diversity and things that it covered. However, I didn't think that they really delved into one particular thing in great detail. So it felt like everything was quite surface level. And I think that was probably just because there was so much in there to try and discuss that they just couldn't delve into it all in so much detail. I would have really liked to see more chat about the mum and her disability, because I feel like that is very underrepresented, especially in YA and thrillers. So yeah, I feel like it had a lot of potential, but there were definitely parts that fell a little bit flat. But overall, I think the concept was super interesting, and that was a really good part of the book.
Yeah, I agree. The author, when I interviewed Sarah, she said that she actually was looking at an advent calendar and she thought about how she could make that into like a large scale murder mystery, which I thought was really clever, or mystery in general. I suppose there's a bit of death in there. And yeah, I agree, Gemma. I think when there's lots of things covered, it's hard to do them in depth, isn't it? I think about this a lot, about representation, and it's really hard when you're from a certain background to kind of think you want to represent the society that this book is set in and the time period and the rest of it, but you also want to do it justice and make sure that you kind of, if you've included something, you give it its real due and explain it in enough detail. What do you think, Kasia? Because you're coming at this, I think, from the horror side. What did you think of the book as a whole, and how was it as a piece of horror thriller literature?
So I gave the book a 3, which it's not a bad rating in my opinion, because I take the half is 2.5, so I would still recommend this book. I just feel like it was trying to be something that it ended up not being, in a way. I don't know if this makes sense. I will go more into detail later. I just don't want to start talking about all my theories and stuff. But I think it was a good concept for a Christmas, a festive holiday fun book, like a crime thriller, because I think it was smart to take the Secret Santa and make it something that could be potentially a danger. I thought that was a fun thing to do for Christmas. But for me, I think I had issues with the characters and the way they behave sometimes. So I will go into detail when we talk about the characters. And there's a lot of representation, and I also think that a lot of things were mentioned but not really explained a lot. Apart from her mom, it's also Cal's dad that was an alcoholic, and I think that had more impact on Cal's life than we get to see But there was just so many things in the book that it was hard to give every character the proper background maybe that they needed.
Yeah.
Yeah, agreed. I'm taking a lot on board from this in my own books and kind of thinking like how I can reflect and learn from this. Let's see what the people in the comments think so far. Yeah, I agree. I think whenever I remember first encountering first person, because as a kid I read a lot of like third person past tense, and first encountering first person present tense, which now I'm super familiar with. It was a Judy Blume book and I really struggled with it. Like I think it was my least favorite book at the time just because I'd not encountered it. So I completely agree, Sabrina, on that one. Yeah, I agree.
Prologue, yeah.
Actually, I'd kind of forgotten about that. I'm glad you mentioned that, Mina. It's like, it now thinking back to it, it does make a little bit more sense. Yeah, that's good. I'm glad you enjoyed it, and it seems to be a consensus that it was a bit slow to get going. Oh, that's good that you start to get invested in the characters. Lots of comments. I'm just trying to keep up with everybody. Yeah, I know. I need to have a look at that again as well. Yeah, that's good to know. Oh, Kev's just put in there for me that whenever you see comments that are me, it's generally Kev helping out. So if you want to interview with Sarah, no, it's not just you. Definitely, I forget about stuff like that because I started reading the book beginning of December and then thought, oh, I'm going to have forgotten this by the end of the month. So I tried to eke it out and then obviously totally forgot the beginning of it. Yeah, I did think. I mean, I think there was some good like devices used to keep pulling her back, but there were points where I was like, actually, just phone the police and tell them what's happening. Tell your mom, phone the police. Teenagers in books don't seem to do that. The kids in my books are guilty of that too. Like, just phone the police, Mina. God, come on. So the content of the book was something that I kept coming back to as I was reading it, and a couple of people in the book club messaged me about it, and I know that a couple of us have chatted about it. So let's get into it. What do you think about having really challenging content in YA books? I know, Jem, you teach young people, so it's interesting to talk to you about this. And do you think that this book handled it well? I know from my point of view, I tend to go on the lighter side with my books just because I think that that's what I prefer to read. And I tend to see reading as kind of entertainment. And my version of entertainment is like it's high stakes, but it's sort of, I try to be fun and a bit more of a kind of silly caper with it. So it isn't necessarily what I would normally go for. So I wondered, what did all of you think about having lots of issues in the book, and how well did the book cope with that? Do you want to start us off on that one, Kasia? I know it's a difficult question, so feel free, anybody, to say as much as you choose on the subject.
I always think that, we do go to fiction to kind of forget about our own problems and our own lives, or, we are looking for a distraction sometimes. But on the other hand, it's good to normalize certain things because it cannot always be that everybody has a perfect family and everybody has money and everybody, it's just not reality. So I don't think it's wrong to include it in YA because it's part of our lives. I just feel like maybe the author put too many of those in the same book because there were so many that I don't think she had the time to really give the proper representation that everything needed. And it was more brushed, like, the alcohol problem. The mother also abandoned Cal, and then the father, it was alcoholic. Then you have Elle's mom with cerebral palsy and, struggling with her job and physically, and Elle wanting to become something, like physiotherapy for later. And like, it was just so convoluted that it didn't have the time and place that it needed. So maybe we would have needed just one of those. But that's just my opinion. But I don't think it's wrong to put those heavy topics in YA because it's part of life. Not all YA books need that because a lot of books, are there because we need to distract ourselves from problems that we have. But I don't think it's wrong because it's part of life, So I thought it was nice to see a family struggling buying Christmas presents because not everybody's Christmas looks like in the movies, Some people don't have money for big presents and they have to do with what they have. And I thought that was nice to see, or that the mother still finds love at her age with a disability. Like, it's all good things to see. I just think maybe it was way too much to cram into the book.
Yeah, that's a good point. And Sarah, the author, said similar in the interview that she wanted to not leave those, because I was curious and asked her what her take was on including lots of things like that, and she said that she felt that she was trying to represent like a realistic world and that these things do happen and that teenagers can cope with it. So that was her similar take on it as well. What do you think, Gemma?
Yeah, I think it was always good to include various different things in YA, difficult topics, because you're absolutely right. Kids who are reading these books will face these sort of issues, and it's always important for those kind of kids to be represented in books and feel that they're not alone experiencing these kind of things. I think the problem I had in the case with this book in particular is that the writing style felt like it was younger YA, but some of the topics were slightly older end of YA. So things like the not being able to hold the Christmas presents, the disabilities, even so far as the abandonment, I think that would have been okay in the younger kind of YA. But when it came to things like alcoholism, the sexual abuse and things like that come up in the book, I feel like that's a much older YA bracket. So I feel like if you're going to have those kind of issues, it should be aimed at an older YA audience. But this one felt like it was aimed at a younger YA audience in parts, if that makes sense.
It completely does. And I wonder, I've been thinking about this, like, what is the way around this? Because how can you kind of protect those children who aren't ready to read difficult things? Like, I would have picked up a book like this at 9, and I don't think I would have been ready for some of the content. So I think for me, I don't want to say that kids can't read books, but I wonder whether things like a content warning and even like rough suggested ages can help with things like, you know, for librarians and for parents who, because quite often I chat to parents in the YA section because, you know, I'm lingering and looking at books and they'll say, oh, have you read this? Like the book that I'm reading the back of. And quite often it is hard to navigate, like, is this a book appropriate for a 10-year-old, for an 11-year-old, 12? And it depends on the kid as well. So yeah, I totally get it, Jem, that I think that it's really hard to gauge, isn't it, with some books, like the writing style and the content. And I think representation's a really tricky one too, because I think the more representation you put in, you've got to be really confident in all of that. And I think that some of the feedback I got was that a couple of people just thought some of the representation, like, that pertained to them, they kind of had questions about it, but there wasn't enough time, I think, in a short book to go into it in enough depth. How about you, Shelley? What did you think of kind of your reading, including this sort of thing in YA books, and then how the book dealt with it?
Yeah, I think pretty much on board with everything that you've all said. When I first started reading the book, I was like, oh, the characters seem as if they're maybe like 14 or 15, like they did read younger. And then the concepts got darker as it came out about, you know, the character of Mina and how she was sexually abused. And I don't know if you guys were the same as this, but the part where the Secret Santa leaves the gift with the messages from the Snapchat, and it was just so graphic. It took me out of the book for a second, and I cringed because I was like, oh, that's really horrifying. And then I really thought, yeah, content warning would be good here. Like, for example, I think, like, you know, Hotkey Books and Red Eye, I think they do sometimes put their content warnings on the back, like, not for younger readers. So it might have been, I think that a lot of parents like to read ahead as well and check the books before the kids read it. And if they were just reading like maybe the first 4 or 5 chapters of that book, they might be like, oh, I think it's going to be absolutely fine. So yeah, in that sense, I think a content warning would have definitely have been good for that. I think it was very brave and bold of the author to actually address these subjects, because I do think personally that books do need to have these subjects in it. Not all books, but because I do think we need escapism, and, you know, different books are different things. But I think that I like to know that there are real world issues in books as well that teenagers can pick up and relate to. And there's so much in this book that people can relate to. For example, even just like the toxic friendship between Calista and Ellery, it's like, you know, I think that when teenagers are young, like, everything is very heightened, you know, you're still got to learn how to become an adult. And you go through periods where you do attach yourself onto friends, and, you know, there was a lot of mention of the toxic friendship between the two of them. But then you also have to evaluate the reasoning behind that. Like, Calista is in a very difficult situation, and she feels very alone. So that it's not just cut and dried, you know, there is a lot of things going on. So I think a lot of teenagers could relate to this and get something from it and learn something from it. And just even things like the way that Ellery, you know, the way she treated her mother's disability was really, like, it really upset me, you know, and I was like, oh my goodness, she's really been so mean about her mum and, you know, embarrassed by her and things like that too. But again, I think there are a lot of teenagers out there who possibly would react exactly that same way if they had a mother like that. So maybe it might have the opposite effect, a teenager reading that from another child's perspective, thinking, well, that doesn't come across very well. Maybe I should be nicer to my own parent. Or that's what I would like to hope would come from the book. I feel it was kind of the same with weight. Weight was mentioned a lot in a very negative way, like, oh, she would be really pretty if she just lost a little bit more weight. And I cringed at those moments as well. Because I feel, speaking as somebody who struggles with my weight a lot, I didn't like reading that side of it. But again, I think that is possibly a way that a teenager might think too. So I think she really got herself into the teenage mindset in writing this book. And I'm hoping that it would have like the opposite effect for a teenager reading it. That's kind of my take on it as well.
Yeah, that's a good point. And I'd like to think, hopefully, that teenagers it will open up discussions with people and open up thinking. So even if there's a viewpoint that somebody doesn't agree with, like, say, you said about the way, that it might open up discussions and open up thinking. And even if something comes across negative, that maybe somebody can take a positive from it. So thank you. They were all really well-considered answers. I know it's a difficult one to start with, so we'll move on to other things. I really appreciate all of your really thoughtful answers. Let's just see what the people in the comments are saying, and then we'll jump to the next question. Mm-hmm. Yeah, I mean, I get that. I agree, Nina, that it did sort of match what her character traits are like. And yeah, lots of excuses. Not going to the police. Yeah, too much struggle. Let's see. Yeah, that's interesting, isn't it? That sometimes hearing what an author was actually going for, you don't always get that opportunity, do you? So it is nice to be able to interview them, because I felt the same way, Caroline, talking to Sarah about it. I understood it a little bit more, just because that isn't the way my mind works when I'm writing. Yeah, I agree as well, because I think that was something for me, like you said, Shelley, and the way, they were the two things where I thought, oh, I could have just done with a little heads up about that, because even as an adult, it like surprised me a little bit. Yeah, exactly. And I think that I've wondered with the first two Mina books, I was thinking, oh, a couple of people said they could have done with a warning about the murder content, but I was like, actually, it's kind of in the blurb. So that's why we didn't put content warning on for that, because I thought if it's really evident, so far I haven't used one. But if it's kind of not evident from the blurb, then you could pick it up. Yeah. Agreed, Sharon. It's good to see books delving into it, but yeah, maybe it does help readers to navigate a little bit if that's not what they're looking for. Okay, so Kashi, you said you had some thoughts about characters, so let's get into that. And I know a few people in the comments took a few issues with Ellery's decisions to keep going back into this terrifying abandoned building, which hard no from me. I love abandoned buildings, never been in one. So what were your thoughts about the characters, Kashi? Do you want to elaborate a little bit on what you started saying earlier?
Yeah, it's funny because, I don't think I had a favorite character, which is weird because normally I tend to like, even if it's the villain, normally I tend to like someone. But I just felt like all the relationships were in some way toxic. Like, I didn't even want her to be friends with the other people. And also, like, sometimes the way they would do things or talk to each other, for me, it just didn't feel like a real friendship, or it just felt like they weren't friends. Like, I don't know if it's the way the characters were written or just the way they were talking to each other, but I had a hard time believing that they were friends. And they were supposed to be best friends, like Cal, Ben, and Elle. And I didn't believe it, and I think that's what I struggle with it, because for me, characters are important. And not to like them, I can also dislike them and enjoy them, when you have a good villain. But I just didn't feel like I cared enough for the characters, and the relationships that they had they didn't feel real to me, but it might have been just my experience, so.
I think that's the interesting thing, isn't it? That I think every book you read, there'll be people that take different things away. And yeah, I agree with you that having strong feelings about a character in thrillers and horror is really important, because you either want to feel that kind of, oh, they're absolutely awful, and something bad happens to them. Like, that gives you a visceral reaction, doesn't it? And if you really like them and something bad happens, you get strong reactions to it. How about you, Jen? What did you think of the characters?
Yeah, so I did have a favourite. My favourite character was Benny. I thought he was the shining star of this book. I thought he was hilarious and one of the characters that had a lot of depth, and despite various different things going on in people's lives, he seemed to understand a lot of other people's perspectives, which was really nice to see. And obviously he kind of got wrapped up in all of this mess without even realizing he was wrapped up in all of this mess, but still handled it very well, which was really good to see. On the character cast as a whole, I did think it really represented kind of messy teenage high school life, that you could see a lot of characters that you would see walking around your own school, like best friends that have been dependent on each other since primary school, attached to the hip. You can imagine them elsewhere from each other. You've got the bad boy that kind of people fawn over for no good reason, really. And then those kind of like cliques that form, but then people can try to break out of them. So I thought that was really well, in a way it represented the high school experience quite well, which was really nice to see. And yeah, I did think it was really interesting to see three friends from three very different walks of life in a best friendship group. Yeah, that was good to see.
Yeah, and I think a 3 is a difficult number to navigate. I've been there so as a teenager, so I related to that. And yeah, I think of all the characters, Benny is the one that I think I would be friends with, because I think he would have you back and actually show some empathy and, you know, be there through all the difficult stuff that these characters were going through. How about you, Shelley? What did you think of the characters in this one?
Yeah, I'm very much on the same board as you, Gemma and Amy, with the characters. I tend to have a tendency to never really be championing the main character when I read a book. I am always about the B team, so usually the B characters will get my vote every time, unless it's Buffy. She's the exception to the rule. But personally, Benny was my favourite. I felt as if he was kind of like the glue that kept the group together, and he really did come through for Elle. She was like, you know, he kind of kept her on the straight and narrow. He kind of called her out if she wasn't, you know, doing what she should be doing. So he wasn't afraid to speak his mind, and I liked that. But he was very protective of her, and he was there for her. I mean, he genuinely was right, and at the end, nearly died and everything as well to look after his friends. So he was, yeah, straight away I liked him and his sense of humour as well. So I was on board. I was on board with that. I think that Elle and Cal needed a Benny in their group. I don't know what they would have been like without him, to be honest. So I think he was definitely a great character. I liked him.
I think they would have imploded without him. They
yeah, probably, yeah.
Leveling out, grounding, and the rest of it. Let's see. Do you know what, Sharon? I thought the same thing, that some of the ways the teenagers talk to each other shocked me. But then I thought, actually, I've heard teenagers talking to each other like that. So that's another choice, isn't it? It's, do you represent teenagers in a book actually as you've heard them speaking, or do you represent them in a kind of glossier way and take kind of some of the honesty away? So yeah, and it's difficult when things like fat phobia come up. It's really, really hard to read. Yeah, he was really good at that. He was good at kind of pulling Ellery up, wasn't he? At saying, actually, yeah, like Nina said, sometimes when she's being really harsh, I think he was there to say, well, actually, there's a reason for that, and give him balance. Because I think as a reader, we can do the same thing. We can judge somebody, and he reminded us why characters were behaving in a certain way. So moving on slightly to the settings, that was one of my favourite things about the book. I thought that the atmosphere was really creepy, and I thought particularly that kind of dark mirror of the building that was inhabited and the building that wasn't was a really clever, creepy idea. So I wondered, what did you think of the settings and the atmosphere in this book? Jem, do you want to kick us off on this one?
Yeah, my favourite parts of the book were when she was going into the building. I feel like that's when it felt the most like a thriller. I was the most invested because you didn't know what was coming, you didn't know what was going to pop out, and I loved the setting of the abandoned building. I thought that was great. It felt very representative of the places that you see in London as a city. And yeah, again, I agree with that dark mirror representation, the fact that she could see it directly from her own house, which, although to her, she had her own issues and her own problems, it was kind of like this mirror of what could be, what could have been for her own life, which I feel like in the end, made her grateful for her relationship with her mum, for her house, for the things that she had, which was a good plot point.
Definitely. I like it when a character kind of comes out of a book with some gratitude and feeling like they've grown. And I thought it was really chilling when she'd be looking out and kind of think she was safe sometimes, and she's like, oh, I can't see the light. And then she'd just see this gleam of light on the edge of the building. And like my heart kind of sank with her. I thought it was really visceral at those moments. That was definitely, I'm with you, Jem. That was when I felt the most like, oh, she's going to do it again. She's going to go. Like people in the comments have been saying, this is her character. She's going to be driven to go and find out what's happening. How about you, Kasha? What do you think of the settings and the atmosphere?
Yeah, I mean, I also really like the abandoned building. I think, like Sharon is saying in the comments, that was the best character. That would change my answer. My favorite character was the abandoned building. I agree. And I like that it was also like a parallel that you have Elle breaking into the building, and then somebody's also breaking into her house at the same time. So it's like invading.
That was terrifying.
Yeah,
so scary.
Yeah, that is maybe even more terrifying, that she going into this tower, because the fact that you know that somebody has access to your house and you don't know when they're gonna go in or if they're already inside. It's the typical, home invasion scenario that it's really scary in movies, because it's something that can happen anytime to anybody. And I like that she kept going to the building, and it was almost like a serial killer is giving you like little presents of, his victims or whatever. And the only thing that ended up happening for me is that because she kept going every day, it kind of ended up being a bit too repetitive at some point. And I think that maybe there were too many gifts. Maybe it would have been better the important gifts and less and entering the tower, and maybe longer scenes instead of so many little presents, because at some point it became like, okay, here we go again, and then here we go again, and it became a little bit repetitive for me. So like things like the mother's pills or things that were not exactly needed to solve the bigger picture, the bigger mystery, maybe could have been left out, because I did feel at some point that it was repetitive, even though I loved the idea. And I think it was a great way of doing a crime thriller and keep the tension going. But I did feel like it got a bit repetitive for me.
Yeah, I get that. And it's hard, isn't it, with a high concept idea like 25 or 24 days in the run up to Christmas. It's like hard to keep that momentum. Yeah, I did enjoy the bits where she had more of a push and pull, and she was like, actually, I'm not going to go. And then she did later, like the things that kind of change the pattern a little bit, I thought were really effective. How about you, Shelley? What did you think of the atmosphere and the setting?
Yeah, well, just kind of exactly what you just said there, Kasha. I felt as if the abandoned building was a character in itself, so it created a perfect setting. And I think that, I know that everybody says, don't go, why are you going back in the building? And, why don't you just go to the police? And I think, to be honest, it's just so typical of everything. No teenagers in anything that we ever watch really do that, and like they want to solve the mystery by themselves. So I kind of liked that element, that she was anyway, as we saw later in the book, the police were hopeless anyway, so it's not like they would have probably done anything. But that's always the way the police are portrayed as well. So there was typical, tropes there as well, I suppose, wasn't there? But no, I liked that that side of it. I thought her imagery was great. I could really feel myself like in the moment. And the part when you actually do find out that the pills are there, and that her home has been invaded, and that somebody is truly spying on her in the worst kind of way, I really did have chills. That was the game-changing point for me in the book, because I was like, oh, that's really creepy. I was really creeped out by it. So I actually really quite liked that. I actually felt as if like we never actually found. I would have liked to have known what the other gifts were on the days that she didn't go, because there was a few days that she just kind of missed it out, and I was kind of like, oh, I wonder what she would have got if she went that day. So yeah, I really like the whole Advent theme. I just want to also take a moment to say that I loved the cover. I loved the tagline, the overall premise and concept. Like, I would have picked this book up if it wasn't one of your book club choices. So I was like really, really excited about this book, and there was so much really that I did really enjoy about it as well.
Yeah, a lot of people said that to me, like they'd already picked it up because the tagline drew them in, like, you better watch out, you die. It's so clever, isn't it? it didn't help that my son was singing that all the way through December as well. And I was like, every time he said, you better watch out, my brain went, you better not die, and then didn't say it loud. So yeah, I mean, the people in the comments seem to be agreeing that the setting was such a strong character. Yeah, I agree that polar opposite descriptions were really interesting. Yeah, actually, that's a good point, isn't it? That you can go 12 days of Christmas. Yeah, the building definitely felt like a character. Like, I know stuff in the past it said, like, say in Friends, like New York being a character. I think it's great, isn't it, when an author has the skill to kind of make a setting feel like something that's so real, like one of the people in the book. So we've kind of addressed character and setting. So let's go to plot for a little bit. Did the plot keep you guessing, and did the reveal surprise you? I would love to know. It did surprise me, actually. It's one of those books where I had theories, and I even thought it was Callista at one point. I was like, could it be? Like, is she really, like, has she gone to that place? Like, has something actually gone really wrong for her as a character? So it was a surprise for me, definitely. What did you think? I've totally lost you. I'm trying to ask you in different orders, and I can't remember what I've said, so I'm sorry for doing the same order every time. What did you think, Shelley? Did the plot keep you guessing, and were you surprised by the reveal?
Well, this was my absolute favourite part of the book, and this is what's probably going to leave me sitting with I'm thinking a 4, because it really has made me think, this book. I've kept thinking about it after I've finished watching it as well, reading it. So I think for me, the plot, I totally flummoxed me, because I had it all pegged out. I was like, I think this might be the killer. And I'll tell you, you're going to be shocked when I tell you who I thought the killer was. There was one point where there was a milkshake emoji sent. And then very shortly after that, Benny said, something about going for a milkshake. And I'm like, I was like, I thought it might be him. I thought he might be the killer. And I was like, but I didn't want it to be him, because I really, really liked him so much. And I was like, I really hope that this is not the way it's going to turn out. And then there was a couple of other times where Ellery was doubting him as well. And then I started to think, if she's doubting him, it's not going to be him. So I definitely was quite surprised at the end when we find out who the villain is. And, overall for me, the plot and the ending actually was what I loved most about the book.
Yeah, I agree. I did wonder at one point whether Benny was so nice that it was like a fake out and that he was actually bad. I'm not going to say which authors, but there's a couple of authors I really like that do that super well, where they get you to absolutely love someone, and you just know that that's going to mean in the end that they're the murderer. How about you, Jem? Did you guess the ending, and did the plot keep you guessing as a whole?
I think around day 15, maybe, I guessed it was going to be someone from Nina's past life, Nina's boyfriend. I did not expect it to be Hendrik in the end, obviously being involved with Benny. I didn't see that part coming. So that was a really fun twist, because I thought it was just going to be some random stranger, which he hadn't seen before, but was connected to Nina in some way. So I didn't expect it to be someone that Illyri actually knew in the end. So that was really fun. And yeah, I liked that little twist at the end of finding out it was him, and them all kind of finding out together, with the shock of that. And then I thought it was quite fun to see how he went off afterwards, because you obviously had that really massive, big scene, dramatic scene where he falls down the elevator shaft, and then you look down and he's not there. And it's kind of like that ending with, oh my gosh, where's he gone? So that was really fun, and it was kind of nice to see that, almost like a extended epilogue afterwards, seeing what happened to Hendrik and what he was going to go and do. And it kind of left you guessing then with, what is he going to do now? Is he going to leave this alone, or is he just going to keep carrying on? What's going to happen?
Yeah, I thought that was interesting. I thought maybe they were just going to look down and he was going to be there, and it was that shock, horrible, and then it's done. So it was really quite unsettling, actually, that it did the horror movie thing of, like, the credits are playing and the killer is actually still out there. Yeah, agreed. So how about you, Kasia? Did you manage to guess it? Are you going to be the one of us that got it, or did it keep you guessing?
I think the author did a good job at putting a lot of red herrings, like you were suspecting the love interest. They put a lot of weight on, I think it was called Ras, and there's also this, like, homeless guy. Like, there's so many potential suspects that I think she did a good job at trying to give multiple options so that people were guessing all the time. At some point I even thought it was Nina that was actually not dead, because I was like,
I did as well. Yeah.
What if that would be a nice twist. I thought, what if she's not dead and she's just been missing and comes back? So for me, I enjoyed to learn the background story of, Nina, her other name, what happened to her. I was really invested in that. I just thought the moment where the reveal happens was a little bit anticlimactic for me because I didn't feel like Elle was in any danger then at all. Like it didn't feel like a proper threat. And I was a little bit disappointed. I mean, I understood Hendrik and what he did and everything, and I love the powerful story that comes with that. It was just a reveal moment felt a little bit like I just kind of deflated in that moment. I was like, oh, like it wasn't like as exciting as it wanted it to be. Actually, I was more excited later when Kyle revealed that she swapped the lipstick with the mug. I was like, that's amazing. I love that. So I love that more than the actual reveal for the Secret Santa. And I was thinking, oh, but it would make so much sense if Kyle would be Secret Santa because her mom has abandoned her. Her dad has chosen alcohol over her. And now Nina has taken away Elle. So obviously she's still mad and, it's all of these like passionate revenge. And for me, it would have made more sense. So I guess I like more like kind of like the second reveal than the actual Secret Santa one. But it's just, it was just me, Yeah.
That's the thing with thriller reveals, isn't it? Sometimes you guess it and then you feel disappointed, and sometimes you can't guess it and then you feel disappointed because you think you weren't able to guess it. So I think it's really hard because some people, for everybody that thinks the reveal is great, there's gonna be somebody else who's like, oh, I saw that coming, or somebody else who just doesn't like it. I think that's the nature of thrillers. I totally get it. But I think it's interesting that it did keep all of us guessing, but it wasn't one of those where I went, oh, that doesn't make any sense. I went, oh, actually, yeah, he did insert himself into that situation. It made sense. And I got a bit confused why he did it all over a lipstick. And like you said, when Callista admitted actually she swapped the gifts, I think that then that really firmed up his motive for me. And I was like, yeah, okay. Actually, that's really chilling. That's awful.
Yeah.
And I was back and forth on Callista as to what I thought about her, and that I just thought, oh, I've made my mind up now. I felt really sympathetic towards her, but that was a lot doing that. I agree. I think I suspected everyone. I suspected every nice teacher. I don't think I suspected the mom. I think I even suspected Adam at some point. I was like, nice new boyfriend for her mom. Hey, where did he come from? So yeah, nobody was out off limits. And Sabrina's with me that nice people must be murderers. Yeah, I mean, I think that's the thing, isn't it? It's really hard to put the main character, especially when, although it wasn't from her perspective, it's like that moment of you kind of preserving them to tell the story. It's a tricky one, definitely. So I've nearly finished the questions. I'm hoping Kev's still listening because Kev is going to pick 3 winners. Sarah is going to send 3 signed book plates. A signed book plate, 3 different winners. So Kev, if you can pop that in the comments if you're still here. If not, I will sort it out afterwards if he's gone to sort our little boy out or anything. Oh, did you? Sharon got it. Well done, Sharon.
Oh, well done.
It's nice that somebody managed to get it because I think that it's worked, and I think a thriller, like some people should be able to get there because all the puzzle pieces should be there. So that's really good that somebody out of the group managed to get there. So what was the most memorable part of the book for you? I think a couple of you have alluded to your favourite bits. It's hard for me because I think, like Gemma said, it was often the moments where she went into the building. Was there one particular moment for you, Gem, like a moment where you went, oh yeah, this is the one in the book?
Yeah, I think Shelley mentioned it before. The moment I really got invested in the book was when she realised her mum's pills were missing. That was when it really turned for me. So I feel like that's probably a standout moment because at that point she realised there was actual harm coming to people that she loved and serious things could happen. So yeah, that was kind of the moment that sent the most chills down me, I think.
Excellent. How about you, Kasha? Was there a particular moment where you were like, oh, it's good?
I don't know. I mean, there were a couple of visits to the tower that I really enjoyed because it's always this kind of like you enter a room and you don't know what the gift is going to be because you cannot see exactly what it is yet. And those moments I always find really like interesting as a reader. You know, it's like the energy you have before something is like discovered or something is presented to you. But then, you know, when I was thinking back on the book, I realized that there was a prologue that we all forgot about, or I forgot about. And I wrote, because I wrote notes on every chapter that I was reading, and I really enjoyed the writing style of that first prologue. And it felt to me like, you know, somebody was burying someone that they really loved. So it was almost like a serial killer that has kind of remorse about what they've done, and it was so beautifully written, and later it makes sense. At the beginning, you know, I read it and then the book started and I'm like, what was that for? Like, I didn't understand the connection, because you don't understand it until you get to the end. But now thinking about it, that was so beautifully written, and now it makes sense why it was written that way. So I really enjoyed the prologue now afterwards, after everything.
I know we've talked about prologues before, haven't we? And they're an interesting thing. Like, if they're done well, they can really add to the book, I think. And in this case, I think it really did. I'm going to reread it after this and like see what all the little nuggets were in there that we all forgot about. How about you, Shelley? Did you have a particular standout moment?
Yeah, I'm going to say them really fast because I've got a few. So I liked the bit when the reporters were basically they were all at the funeral part and they were like kind of laying into them, and then they got the camera and got rid of it. And because I feel as if just the way that they were speaking about, a child that had been raped, it was just like unacceptable. And everybody just banded together and just showed them, no, that's not happening. And they basically just threw the camera away and destroyed all evidence of the conversation that had happened. I was like, yes, that's a really good bit. And I loved the end. I loved when Hendrik reveals, why he did what he did and what he was planning to continue to do. Like, he's basically said, look, my life's over, but people need to have justice for what they've done. And I did feel as if there was some sort of poetic justice in the whole sort of vigilante thing, and how Ellery just I was really kind of proud of her at that moment, because she just kind of lets him go to do his thing, and yeah, that in the grand scheme of things, is that right? Probably not, but this guy's out there not paying for what he did and nobody's taking it seriously, and it turns out he's a really bad guy, and nobody knows it. So I thought that was like whilst that might not happen in real life, it was poetic justice to read in a book. So yeah, I really, really liked that. And I also liked the part where when Ellery was being really unkind to her mum, and she was trying not to show her the letter so that she could take the court case further, and then her mum just went to town on her and gave her what for. And I was like, she needed that. She really needed to know what her mum's been through and what she's done for her, and she needed to be brought down a peg or two. So I was like, John Bender, hand in the air, woo! I was like, that was a good moment for me. So yeah, there were so many bits I loved about this book, honestly, and those were 3 really good parts for me.
Excellent answers, everyone. You just reminded me of all the things I liked about it as well. So let's see what the people in the comments are saying, and then we will jump to our last question. Yep. I mean, You've got to be right. If you've suspected everyone, got it at some point. Yeah, I was a bit worried about the kitten, I have to say.
Oh, the kitten. Oh, I know.
Yeah, it's a good thriller, isn't it? When Kev's picked winners. It's a good thriller when you suspect everyone. So Kev has randomly picked Sharon, Vincenza, and Caroline. So if you can send your addresses to me, and you will get a book plate from Sarah. I have only just sent them to her, so it may take a couple of weeks to get them back and then for me to post them on to you. So bear with me. But yeah, if you drop me your addresses, congratulations, you 3. I may even drop it off with Nina, because I know where you live. That sounded really bad in a thriller context, but I do. You are very welcome. Kev is my random name selector. I don't know how he does it, but he just goes through and he's like, yeah, one. So our last question, and I'm going to answer first, so I'm sorry if I steal any of your answers, whether we can recommend any books for people who enjoyed this, who might like to read something similar. I'm going to recommend this one, actually, which I'm going to grab. If you want a really fun mystery, it doesn't have the darkness to it that this one does. It deals with some dark subjects, but in a really humorous way. It's about a girl who has had a heart transplant, and when she wakes up, she's being haunted by the ghost of the girl whose heart she has, and she is determined that she's been murdered, and the murder needs to be solved. So that was really good. And that's Scholastic too. I think Scholastic do this really well. They pick really great thriller authors, because I think Catherine Foxfield and Cynthia Murphy are another 2 if you want really fun, pacey thrillers that make you question everything. Then those are my 3 top tips. Sorry if I've stolen anyone's answers. How about you, Kasia? Do you have any recommendations?
Yeah, I was going to recommend The Midnight Game by Cynthia Murphy as well, because you also have a lot of characters with secrets, and it's a lot of guessing in that one as well. And I just finished reading A Good Girl's Guide to Murder by Holly Jackson. I feel like it also kind of fits a little bit because there's a missing murder girl, and there's also some dark things in that book. And it's really good when it comes to the mystery and trying to make you like sort it. And there's a couple of twists, and I thought it was really well done.
Yeah, I'm glad you enjoyed it. I thought you would. I thought you'd enjoy the mixed media bits too. I think that's a really interesting element of that book.
Yeah.
Thank you for those. How about you, Shelley? Do you have any recommendations?
Yes, I am currently reading, I've not finished it yet, but I'm flying through it, Ravenna Gurin's This Book Kills. It's excellent, and I love the whole high school setting, and again, the teenagers taking matters into their own hands and trying to figure out who the murderer is. So again, kind of similarities there that I think people would enjoy. And there's another one, again, it's kind of high schoolers. It's called Flight 171 by Amy Christine Parker. It's been one of my favourite horrors that I've read in the last couple of years. I've actually read it twice, 2 years in a row. And it's about teenagers that set off on a plane. And there's this really creepy old lady, think Drag Me to Hell. And she basically is able to totally mess with their minds. She grounds, she puts everybody asleep on the plane, so you've only got the passengers there that she's targeting, and she can worm her way into their mind, and all these secrets start to reveal themselves. And there has been basically a hit and run accident, and on the plane is somebody that is responsible for that, and throughout the secrets it comes out in the book. Really good, really creepy.
Is it all
so
set
I'd recommend that. It's all set on the plane.
Oh, wow.
All set on the plane.
Really
but
good.
The pace is brilliant. It's absolutely fantastic, and yeah, I can't recommend this book enough. It's the publisher's Underlined, if you've ever come across that one. But yeah, really, really, really good book. I recommend that one to everybody.
Okay, adding that to my list. How about you, Jem? Do you have any recommendations?
Yeah, I've got a couple. So another Scholastic book is Black Queen, which came out last year. Also in a high school setting. It's about a girl who's determined that she's going to get homecoming queen one year. And then her school decides in a bid for diversity that they're going to pick a woman of colour to be a homecoming queen. And when she's announced as homecoming queen, this girl who thought she was going to get it goes absolutely mad and says, "I should have killed you when I had the chance." And the next morning she shows up dead. And then
it's a good
story, which is really good. I would thoroughly recommend it. Really fast paced, and it deals with that kind of like performative diversity really well as well, which was fantastic to see in a YA book. And then another one was a hotkey release last year called The Sharp Edge of Silence. They had another really catchy slogan or tagline, which was "Boys must be held accountable." And it's set in a twisty drama school in the US, and it's all about toxic masculinity and rape culture in the States, but it's a YA book and deals with that really, really well. So obviously just check the trigger warnings on that one, but it is fantastically dealt with, so I would definitely recommend.
That reminds me, Gina Blaxall, I haven't read her newer book, Love You to Death, but I think it's called You Can Trust Me.
You Can Trust Me, absolutely brilliant book, yeah. Brilliant.
Yeah, that also deals with that sort of thing really well, like masculinity and that kind of culture. And also like the he said, she said thing, like who can you trust when people are telling different stories? And again, check the content warnings on that.
Also, just to interrupt for a second, The Eternal Return of Clara Hart, that's another one that is, if you've never read that, that is absolutely fantastic. That was my favourite read, not last year, but the year before. Brilliant book. It's about a day that relives itself. It's so good. And it deals with toxic masculinity as well.
Excellent. Thank you, everyone. And Sabrina Second's Good Girl's Guide. Oh, I can't wait to think of the third book. That one takes a twisty turn. So let me know when you get to that. Jem's nodding with me for the third book only. Yeah, that has a direction. Oh, hi, Tony. Tony writes for Ginger Nuts of Horror, and I highly recommend checking them out for really good horror reviews. They seem to read absolutely everything. I think I read a lot of YA horror, and I think they read even more. So we definitely need to take these on board. Dossie Coates, Where He Can't Find You. Ellie Cosumano, I don't think I've read the author, Nearly Gone, and Kelly Devos Go Hunt Me. So they are some more recommendations. I've got that on my list. I think Sharon does a book club that's just started, which is amplifying indie horror authors. And I think that is the February pick, if I remember rightly. Please correct me, Sharon, if I'm wrong. I've got that on my list to pick up by then because it sounds really good. Excellent, Caroline. I'll get out your reading for you. So that's reminded me when you mentioned this book kills, it's reminded me to mention that the book club pick for this month is Catch Your Death. So if anybody wants to read along with us, we're reading this one in January. I've just started it and I'm really enjoying it. It's about a bunch of people who end up at this quite chilling kind of stately home in a snowstorm, and they end up getting trapped there, and the family are there, and then some people who don't know them, and somebody is found dead. It's really good so far. Yeah, it is the February book. So if you want to read along with Sharon's book club, that is the February title, and then they're reading January Ghost Story 2. I'm also reading along with the Point Horror Book Club this month. If anybody wants to check that out, we're reading Forbidden Game 3. And there's another cool book club that's just started, the Gothic Victorian Book Club, I think it's called, by Elizabeth Sagewood, and we're reading Phantom of the Opera this month. So somehow I've kind of ended up with loads of book club reads this month, which is exciting. So if anybody wants to join in with those, we're having a lot of fun in our little clubs. And I think that's it. Thank you so much, you three, for coming on. It has been lovely. A really difficult book to discuss because there's so much packed in it. And as usual, you three have been great. Thank you.
Thanks for having us.
It's been a lovely discussion. Yes, I am enjoying it, Sharon. I've just started rereading it. I don't have a date for the live show yet because I haven't asked everyone to go on it yet. It will likely be in early February, although it's my dad's 70th birthday around then. So keep an eye, because I might be, depending on when we do pies and stuff, I might be changing the dates. And also I am on the live show for Phantom of the Opera and Forbidden Game, so I need to tie in with those. So I'll make sure that they don't clash, because I can't be in 3 places at once. I'm on all of those. So yeah, I'll post about it as soon as I know. So thank you so much, everyone. I'm going to sign off now, but I will be doing reading sprints on, I think it's Tuesday and Thursday next week, if anybody wants to come along and say hi. And hopefully I'll catch you all soon. Bye. Thank you.
Bye. Bye, everyone.